All right.
Hello.
Well, welcome,
We have a lot
welcome.
of sunshine because it's early here. It's like 7 in the morning in California. So all this beautiful sunshine is coming through.
Lovely. I love your energy. It's already coming through with the sun from California. Just take your time because we have the translator working, so don't rush it. And first of all, thank you so much for being here with us and sitting by the campfire to share your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Awesome. No problem. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I'll be off the air launching the slides and you're good to go. So welcome.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. All right, everybody. I'm Kathy Klotz-Guest, and I am from California, and I got my coffee in hand. So let's talk about something that we all can relate to, I think. Every human can relate to, because we want culture to recognize humor. We want to bring our full selves to work. We want humor. And yet, a lot of cultures make that soul-sucking sound where you know that you're like, humanity is being sucked out of your body by culture. So what do we do about it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm caffeinated and ready to go. Too often, this is what happens in our corporations, is that humor goes to die there. Here's the story. We're talking about storied cultures. And this whole conference is about storied cultures. And we want stories that lift us up. But the prevailing story in most big companies, even small companies, is this: we don't do that here. If it's less than serious, it's not professional. We know that's the story. And it might be kind of unwritten, or it might be expressly said. But we know that too often, here's the reality. Employees are told, innovate, go innovate. They're also told at the same time, we don't do that here. That's not professional. So we've created a dynamic where we have a conflict in our storytelling. And that's what we've got to rectify. Because less than serious doesn't mean less than professional. Now, like many of you, my story probably sounds familiar. So I did comedy at night, and right out of college, I jumped into tech. So I'm in Silicon Valley, and I came out of the tech space. Now, I did comedy at night. I was doing comedy 6-7 nights a week, doing stand-up and doing improv. And I didn't think anything about bringing that version of Kathy, happy, funny, expansive human Kathy, to work. Until one day I was stopped at the door. I was told that version of me, the human version of me, wasn't welcome. But it didn't look exactly like that. It was, well, we don't do that here. And what I got was, no one will take you seriously. No one will take you seriously. See, if you're funny, no one will take you seriously. That story is one that many of us have been told. So I wanted to fit in. I was right out of college. Yes, I was doing comedy. And I thought, you know what? Okay, fine. If that's what it takes to fit in. And at this time in my life, I was young. Who doesn't want to belong? Now, that's not belonging. And I later would learn that. So I did. I left my humor side, my human side, in my car, in the parking lot, before I got to the building. And women and men said this to me, because that's tech. So every day when I would leave my personality in the car to walk into the building, I would have to go into the women's restroom. It's always a restroom. Women know this. Men, it is. We walk into the women's restroom. That's what I did. And I would have to look in the mirror and check off all the things that I would have to do to fit in. Don't laugh too much. Don't laugh too loud. Don't be too funny. Don't be too direct. Don't do this. And I would literally tick off all the things that I would have to do to squelch and minimize my personality to fit in. Until one day, a colleague, about 6 years went by, pulls me aside and says, you know, you used to be funny. You used to laugh all the time. What happened? And he was right. I had been disconnected and fragmented from my own source, my own power and energy source, my human source, because the environmental story, the culture stories, we don't do that here. And I had so absorbed it. So again, at this time, I did what every woman in tech does. I walked into the women's restroom. Yes, it's always a restroom, like I said. And men, you have your things too. And I had my bathroom breakdown moment. Men, you have man cave meltdowns. Women just have way nicer bathrooms. Why is it a restroom? Because we can go in and not be judged. So I cried. I didn't know what to do. I thought I was so alienated from myself. So after getting it out of my system and mascara is everywhere and my hair is like, just getting that out of my soul, that soul sucking seriousness. I picked myself up off the floor, just dusted myself off, went back to that same mirror that I was doing all my daily affirmations in. And I looked in that mirror and I vowed to reclaim myself, to reclaim my soul and bring humor back to power everything that I did, regardless of what the corporate story was. And as I'm doing that, I look down and I see, women, you'll probably relate to this. I see a little string of toilet paper stuck to my shoe, stuck to the high heel. And I'm laughing because this is the sign that I needed that we take ourselves way too seriously, and that the only antidote for this chronic seriousness is levity and humor. That was the sign I needed. And then about a year later, I was promoted by a boss who promoted me because he said, your humor is innovative. You have great relationships with people. It helps you navigate uncertainty, all the things that we know humor to do. So I finally got to say the words that so many women in tech long to say. I have 10 men working under me. Now, here's the thing. I wish I could say that everybody liked that. They liked humor, Kathy. Not everyone did. And yet I was so much more effective for myself and for others because I rejected the story that the company culture was offering, which was no one will take you seriously. Here's the short of it. And so many of you will recognize yourself in that story. I'm willing to bet right now that my story is in some way our collective story, that a part of you, if it's not your humor, it's something else. A part of you you were asked to leave that at the door before you walked into the building. And many of you were told, we don't do that here. No one will take you seriously. And that's the narrative that we're fighting here. So here's the thing. The same fear that keeps people from using humor is the same fear that keeps people in a culture from innovating. So let me share with you some results of a study that I did with one of my clients out here in Silicon Valley, a large tech company. Because you're thinking, well, okay, what does that mean? Well, here's the thing. We are swimming in our companies in uncertainty and fear. And I'm willing to bet you can relate to that story. I'm willing to bet that if I asked you, how much fear have you felt in a company in culture, in a company environment? Many of us would say yes. So I did a study with a client in 2020, and a global multinational tech company, and we asked their employees, we had a couple thousand people respond, and we asked them, all right, tell us a couple things about innovation. And we asked them, what excuses, what reasons really do you give your bosses for not innovating? And most people said overwhelm, resource constraints. Now we know that some degree of resource constraints helps us innovate, can breed creativity. Then we asked, here's the kicker. We asked them, what's the real reason? What do you think it is? There's what you tell your boss. What do you think it is? And here's what interestingly happened. It flipped. What they told their boss was, we don't have enough resources. We're overwhelmed. And what they really thought, employees thought, was, we're afraid. Fear. Fear was the story. Fear. And we are swimming in it. Fear of judgment, fear of coworkers, fear of failure, lack of trust and safety. 77% of respondents globally at this tech company said fear. And here's the thing. They were mostly afraid of coworkers, of being judged by coworkers. So what does that mean? Well, look, we've got to write a new story. So if we're going to change that soul-sucking, serious culture story, we've got to write a new story that we don't do that here. This behind that, we don't do that here. When people tell you we don't do that here, here's the undercurrent narrative that they may not tell you. It's fear. So the new story we have to write is one where we take the fear wall down. We have to fear less. Now, I'm not saying that there's such a thing as fearlessness. I think that's hard, but we can fear less. And that's the story we have to write. Now, here's the thing. There are penalties to using humor. People are right. There are some penalties, especially, unfortunately, the research bears out for women. That doesn't mean women, you shouldn't use it. You shouldn't use it. Don't listen to that. Yes, there are penalties, but that has a lot to do with unconscious bias. But there's plenty of opportunities. The research tells us not only is humor related to innovation, and I'm going to get to that in a second, people that use humor effectively are more liked. They create more safety. They make more money. And they're considered better leaders. According to the Harvard Business Review, they're liked more. They're rewarded more, they're promoted more. And whether or not it's true, using humor is perceived as a competency. You look and appear more confident and competent. So humor is a skill, and it's a skill that we can learn. So let's talk about humor. Humor, the new story we have to write, is one of compassion and empathy, and that is bigger than fear. Way bigger than fear. How do you combat fear? By making it safe to do the things that we're afraid of. So humor is nothing more than having that compassion and empathy for other people and for yourself. You can't give to other people what we don't have. So what did we do? Well, this same company, we took a couple of teams, and I'm going to share with you some of the results. After we did that study, we sought to change the culture story. We sought to change things. And we said, all right, we have to change the story and the foundation that props up the story. And this is really important. If we want to change the story, and I'm trying to slow here because I know there's somebody translating. Sorry. If we want to change the story, we have to change the foundation that underpins that story. So we have to dismantle that as well. So here's what we did. Here's 4 things that'll help you change a story and help us start to change a humor narrative. First, we redefined the story. One, away from fear, and we don't do that anymore, to one of innovation and experimentation and play. And humor is play. And here's the research. When we're in our humor brain, and it's not just jokes, we have to redefine humor to be more expansive. When we redefine it as play and as joy and experimentation, people will innovate and play more. So we're redefined humor and redefine the story of why humor and a culture that laughs together, plays together, innovates together. And that's the story we started telling. You redefine the story of experimentation and innovation and how humor fits into that story. Secondly, you have to normalize it. Well, when you hear people being negative, we don't do that here. You have to combat that. You have to normalize it. When people use humor well and successfully, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it for men, women, for everybody. And that means social proof. We have to have social proof. One of the things that we don't do a great job of in a lot of our companies, big companies, is we say, here's the story. But the story is what everybody believes, not what leaders say. So we have to have social proof. If there are pockets of the company using this new narrative well and showing proof of somebody failing, using humor, being playful, experimenting, and doing something innovative, we have to share those stories. So we have to have social proof. Thirdly, we have to model safety. That's right. We can't just change a culture story without modeling safety. And that means it's everybody's job. Modeling safety is everyone's job. Yes, it's leadership's job. It's also your job and my job. How do each one of us show up as the person we wish somebody would be for us? And in improvisation, which is all about innovation, we say, I got your back. I'm showing up for you. We have to have that in place. And the fourth pillar to changing the story and the foundation with credibility is language. We have to watch our mindset. We have to make sure that we're allowing for yes and, for example. Yes and is an improv concept that says, I heard you, I see you, I accept what you offered, and I'm going to add on to that to move that idea forward. So we have to have a language that is expansive, allows for possibility, it's playful, and it's a fun mindset. So those are the four pillars that have to be in place to change the story. Now, I know what you're wondering. You're thinking, okay, so what happened? What happened? Well, we actually worked with the top executives to start changing the story. But here's what we had to do. Change doesn't happen overnight. You need top down and you need bottoms up for that story to catch hold. We started with 2 teams. You can't start something overnight. But we did have the executives constantly reinforcing that story of innovation and humor and why humor is so magical. And we started with 2 teams. And here's what we did to show you kind of a before and after. Again, those 4 pillars. 2020, we asked this question. Give me a yes, right? Give me a yes or no. And it was pretty binary. But we asked them things like this. A couple of things on the survey was, do you agree with this statement? I feel psychologically safe. And in 2020, 2 teams, the people in those 2 teams, only 21% said yes. By 2022, after working with 2 teams, 58% said yes. Now, it's never going to be 100%. There's no such thing. Even oxygen only has a 94% approval rating, yes. So it's a big change, though. It's a shift. 58% said yes, they feel safe. In 2020, 44% of those teams, of people in those teams said, yes, we feel we bring humor to the table. That's still under 50%. And in 2022, 73% said, yes, we believe the statement. We agree with the statement that humor is welcome here. That's not nothing. 73%, that's something. Now, here's the kicker. We asked in 2020 about innovation and collaboration. And they weren't measuring it. So I don't have a benchmark for 2020 because it was more anecdotal. There wasn't a quantitative measure. So in 2022, when we asked, all right, how is it changed your innovation and collaboration? Anecdotally, just story-wise, people said, yes, we agree with the statement that innovation and collaboration has gone up. And we asked them, how do you know? And they said, well, we see it. We hear it more. People are speaking up. People are less afraid. We've taken down fear. People are far less afraid to speak up and give an idea, even if it's a crazy idea. That's how innovation happens. So you can see before and after, we were able to move the needle. Here's the thing, folks. 2 teams, keep it focused. Bottoms up, everybody in the team is responsible for safekeeping the story. And also executives top down it's imperative that they buy in and they keep repeating and sharing social proof across the company about innovation and humor, and that humor is welcome here. Sharing those stories is imperative. If you say you have it, then you got to do it. So here's the thing I really can't emphasize enough. What do we take away from all this? I know there's a lot coming at you. Look, a lack of humor is a lack of trust. Safety and innovation and humor are linked. They're so linked. So the story of humor is as much the story of safety and innovation. Because when people feel free to express humor and learn and grow from it, they feel safe to innovate. Those go together. So when we're changing the story of humor, what we're really doing is changing the story of safety and the story of innovation at the same time, because those 3 need each other. The very fear that keeps people from expressing humor is the same fear that keeps people from innovating. Fear of judgment, fear of coworkers, bosses, and fear of failure. And that's the lever that we have to understand. So when you see a lack of humor, there is a profound lack of trust in that environment. And that's a story and a narrative we have to change. So when you see a lack of humor in a company, I promise you there's a lack of great innovation too. So don't just walk away from those companies. Run, get out. Humor is a value. It really is. And it is a story that's worth nurturing. But like anything else, like I said, we have to have those 4 points of underpinning that. We have to have the changing of the humor story. We have to redefine a new story. We have to normalize it, and we have to have social proof. Look for the social proof. But you have to make sure that the social proof is real, it's not fictionalized, and it's disseminated, and it's a we story, and it's a true story. Everybody's job is safety. It's not just leaders. Leaders, yes, and bottoms up, everybody in the team has to buy into safety, number 3. And number 4, we have to have a language. We have to have a language for that mindset, whether it's yes and, or we do that here, or yes and, or tell me more. We have to have positive, open, collaborative language that makes people feel safe to be able to laugh, to be openly playful, which again, when you're in the playful brain, you're in the innovative brain. So again, basically to summarize this, it's lack of humor is a lack of innovation, it's a lack of trust. So what do we really do here? And I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Be the change. Be the change. Social proof. The only way we credibly change a narrative is to replace it and to keep saying it and provide the social proof and normalize it. Have the language, have the safety, all those things occur together. And you have to show up and be the change. You need bottoms-up support from everybody. You need top-down support. So make sure you're the change that we all need. All right. And I would say, too, also on being the change, bring your humor self to work. Don't be afraid to bring your humor self to work. It's so important. So bring that to work. And that's kind of all I had today. Thank you so much, everybody. Be the change. And if you want to connect with me, please feel free to do that. I'd love to continue the conversation. We can do it on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm at Keeping It Human, so feel free to reach me there. Thank you so much, everybody.
Katie, thank you so much. That was lovely, and thank you for sharing both how it is important to restore humor and how we can actually do that and why in terms of data we should be doing it. So guys,
Yeah.
please go on with your questions into the chat, and I'll leave some contacts of Katie in the chat so you can reach out to her.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you while we're waiting for the questions. So what kinds of organizations are usually the most stuck in anti-humor story?
I think the most anti-humor story tend to be very technical organizations in my experience. And I think it's because, and here's the interesting paradox, is that sometimes the most self-labeled, we're innovative, we're tech, we're innovative, actually happen to be the most stuck in anti-humor. But here's the thing, they don't think they are. If I were to ask the leaders, do you support humor here? They would all say, yes, we support humor. And yet that's not the message that their employees are getting. When you ask the employees are like, So I think a lot of technical organizations are in denial about that. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for
Definitely.
explaining. There's this question from Tatiana. How do you not cross the line in corporate culture, going too much into humor and at the same time not feel that it's not natural?
Right. So part of redefining the story is exactly that. We have to redefine humor. And humor is more than jokes. Humor is playfulness. Humor is about, hey, let's try this. And what if we did that more in our meetings? And it's organic. And that's a really important point. Humor only works if it's organic. It's not forced. It's not, I'm going to crowbar some jokes in. So I would say, Tatiana, it's about bringing that playfulness, that kind of levity, that lightheartedness, that same thing that you would have in innovation, bring that to the table. And it only works, you'll know, because your team will support you. You've got to have that team support that also says, yes, we do humor because we value that brain, that mindset is important in innovation.
Awesome. Tatiana says thanks and has another great question. So is it possible to use jokes and anecdotes, not like short stories but like fun stuff, to express a company's story or like organization's chronology? Like mix them up. How do you have maybe an example you had in your practice?
Can you go through that question one more time? I just want to make sure I'm clear on what the ask is.
A company usually has a story, but it's not a narrative. Most of the time it's date, fact, and it's brain numbing. It's really boring. So I guess Tatiana is asking, is there a way to mix some humor into communicating the company's story? And have you seen any cases of companies doing that?
Absolutely. So one of my favorite tools is, the story spine from a gentleman by the name of Ken Adams out here in California. Use the story spine. You're shaking your head. Use the story spine. Once upon a time. And I think you can have a lot of fun using a story spine kind of style just to get it started and start to explore the backstory, the origin story. So get away from facts, but weave facts in with the bigger human story. Once upon a time, our founder, he realized that he had no way to get his pictures into a computer and share them with people around the world. And so only half of his family ever saw photos of his child. So every day people did that. And because of that, they couldn't see all the family's photos. And he had a big family around the world until one day he realized, oh my gosh, I know how to create a fix for that. So we created this software. And because of that, people started sharing their lives around the world. And because of that, photos exploded. And because of that, until now everybody shares photos around the world. And we've started a revolution, a human revolution in how we share. It's not just changed photos, it's changed how we share. That's an example of using the story spine, Tatiana, to really get out of, the facts and get into the human motivation behind the origin story of the company. Yeah.
Awesome. I just remembered this example from one of the Russian companies that might be applicable. Just a shortcut. So we have a company called Yandex. It's basically like Google, but in Russia. And on their main page, in one of their early stages of the story, they have a line that goes, well, our founders were picking up a name and they wanted to create a search tool. And a search tool in IT sphere is called Indexer. So they had a lot of indexers around and they were looking for a name. So our founder scribbled yet another indexer with irony, and it came down to Yandex, yet another indexer. So this was a fun way of saying that it's like, it's fun for us. We are simple guys. And that's a moment where it was like really lighthearted. So maybe there are points like this in your company's story that can share that you are lighthearted, if you need that, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I see somebody's asking a couple questions there. 80, you're asking for someone at the bottom of the rung in an organization. When leaders are humorless. Yeah, that's a tough one. Here's what I would do. Is I would continue to bring yourself to work, give yourself permission to show up with humor. I would also bring that up if you can in your team. One of the things that I recommend is that, again, top down, we need that, but we cannot wait for top down to ratify humor. You've got to bring it in bottoms up into your team. I would discuss with your team, hey, what if we tried a couple things every meeting to get ideas flowing? Would you be open to that? How about we try that? And if they don't answer you, just bring it anyway. Here's a radical idea. Forgiveness, not permission. Just do it. Because I think once people see how it changes the innovative dynamic and how it lightens the mood and how it's good for the team, more people come on board. So I know that safety is the issue. As I just showed, safety is the big mindset block that we have to overcome. What I would try to do is get agreement and get safety in your team. At least can we talk about it in your team? And if you are a team leader, make it safe to have those discussions. Open that discussion with your team. Bring it to your team, Adi. I hear you. So bring it to your team, see where the line is, and don't give up trying to bring some of that. And I feel you. We're battling psychological safety here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Polo about humor backfiring. Any ideas on how we can counter that?
Yeah. Here's what I would do. In my experience, I'm just going to say most people who bring humor to work and it fails, it doesn't backfire. It falls flat. It's more like a slide whistle. Wah, wah. Honestly, the percent of people where humor backfires big time is actually very low because most of the time, as you said, the intent is good. So have an open discussion about it. If somebody gets offended, there's nothing you can do. Those are their feelings. Here's what I would say. I'm sorry. My intent was good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. An honest apology is important. I really do honestly have to say that it's very low risk when your intent is good, but also match the intent with the practice. Here's a way to stay on the other side of the line. Ask yourself, is my humor at somebody else's expense? And if the answer is yes, don't do it. It's actually very simple. Make fun of a situation, poke fun at ridiculous nonsense, poke fun at the perils of parenting, poke fun at the pandemic, everything about the situation. But if your humor starts to go into people or their experiences or marginalized communities, don't do it. And I think, honestly, I promise you 99% of the time, you'll stay on the right side of that line.
Great advice. It's always good to check. And I think it's the same with stories. You can tell a story with a bad ending, but it's better be you who reached the bad ending, not somebody else. So you
exactly. If you joke about your own experiences, it's pretty safe. But be careful about somebody else's experiences because you can't speak for somebody else.
Exactly.
And I think that's where people get into trouble. But like I say, honestly, 99% of the time, if people say their humor failed and I am about it, it's more a joke and it fell flat. Nobody got offended. It's just the joke was wah, wah.
That just happens.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, it's life. So, okay, we I don't see any more questions, but I have one actually. And
Sure.
Yeah, dad jokes, Paula. Exactly.
Dad jokes are great. Mom jokes, dad jokes, perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my question would be, so we're actually keeping score for day 3 now. So the question is, since culture forms the stories we live and tell, but the stories also form the culture we live in, what came first in your opinion, culture or stories?
I think stories came first. I think somewhere along the line, stories came first. And unfortunately, in a lot of companies across the globe, we absorbed this story of anything that isn't serious is unprofessional. And that is so not true. That is absolutely not true. But do understand that the subtext behind that story is human fear. That's what we're battling. So that's why psychological safety is so important. And if you can do that, honestly, not only will humor go up, but innovation will go up. And isn't it interesting that they occur together? Because the same fear that holds back innovation is the same fear that keeps us from employing our humor selves. So story came first, I guess, is the long way to answer that.
Lovely. Kathy, thank you so much. It's been a refreshing beginning of day 3, second part. Guys, let's give our fires to Kathy. That was lovely. And please stay with us to watch the rest if you want to. And we'll be moving forward.
Yes, Story Spine, everybody. That's your friend.
Exactly. I'll have the link in the chat. So if you have any questions for Kathy, please feel free to write them. And here are once again.